area between the fence and the southwest diagonal area, and why along Abbey Road as well? Why is that extra cleared area there? There doesn't seem to be any need for that.
So just so you can see the plan, there's a green line drawn on here. That's the scalloped line. And then you can kind of see inside of that between the building, there's like a blue shape. That's a drainage basin. So there's a bunch of stormwater design.
Okay.
That includes that. So I drew a grading plan, which would be the limits of earthwork. And I installed all the stormwater best management practices all around the site. And then I cleared right up to the edge of them to minimize clearing. But those areas will all be planted. I mean, I show them blue just to illustrate them for this picture, but they'll only have water in them when it rains. They have to drain within 72 hours per the regulation. So they'll be dry most of the time, and they'll have vegetation, grass or meadow mix. Usually on slopes, we use what's called an erosion control mix, which is like a meadow type grass, a tall grass.
All right. I was looking at drawing number 3, which didn't show the basins. So if I look at drawing number 5, which is the one you're looking at now, then it's clear why those areas are cleared.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So I do not have any questions at this time. George, if you're all set, Mark is, I'll open it up to public comment. All set. So we have, yes, Joanne's going to bring you the mic. Please announce your name for the record.
Hello, Cindy True, 103 Town Hill Road. I had a short question. I was wondering if there's going to be any blasting involved with preparing this property land.
No, we don't anticipate any. We actually spent a fair amount of time out there doing exploratory test pits. We went to depths exceeding what's excavated here. And I was concerned about that as well long before I drew this plan. And we encountered no ledge to any of the depths that, one of the drawings, probably drawing 2, actually shows all the test pits and the results. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, right here.
I have a few questions. Bill Taylor, New Hartford Road. Let's see, I'll start with the simple ones first. In terms of the plantings, what's growing along the site now is a mix of shrubs, trees, and I think that would probably make more sense than to plant just street trees that you put around an office park. You want to match the forest and use some native plants and reserve some of that native soil from the site instead of hauling it off as fill. And my guess is that the 8.3 acres also, you have to have some sun for the greenhouses, so you can't have trees right up to them. And I just, I'm assuming that what you've drawn there is going to be adequate for the amount of sun the site needs, and that you won't have to clear further. Just, I guess that's one question. Another one concerns the odor. One of the questions I had, which I don't think George included specifically, was in terms of the odor mitigation. Are there places where it's been successful? Is there any data that can be provided even without giving names or contact information for the people for which it's working for cannabis? Because I'm concerned that it's all theory at this point. If there isn't any data that can be provided, and then as far as the deed, I feel like that kind of got skipped over. The statement is the restrictions. There are restrictions that the land may be used for single-family home sites only, and may not be used for single-wide manufactured mobile homes. That's exactly the wording, and it seems pretty clear. No duplexes, no triplexes. And one could infer no large operations, and I think this opens up the project to litigation, which could delay the revenue coming into the town. And I think that is a realistic concern. There are a number of people that don't want to see this project, and that is a little place where you could put litigation. I mean, people have talked about it. I'm not putting any ideas out there that haven't been put out there. it seems to me the intent of the seller was to keep it a sort of a single family neighborhood with fairly attractive homes, not requiring it to be mansions, but it could be, couldn't be the least expensive housing. So it seemed like that was the intent of the seller. And I know that's between the seller and the buyer, but it is a deed restriction. And I don't know what's enforceable and what's not enforceable, and lawyers can work that out. But I'm just concerned that legal action would cause some problems with that. And as far as the odor mitigation, yes, it's by code. All the codes have been met, but does it actually work? That's kind of the biggest question. And what are the decibel levels? I think George implied that we would monitor the site and see if the noise was excessive for people or wildlife, but that there must be some data from those fans about how many decibels they create and what distance and so forth. That it can vary based on the topography, but there's got to be a range that could be given so that we could be reassured that it won't be excessive noise. And I don't feel like that's been given either. So those are I think those are pretty much my concern. And if the buildings are going to be low enough to keep the sound down, won't they be too low to get into? Won't they be excessively low in terms of drainage and the greenhouses drowning in water? If you're going to have them way below grade, that would be a concern. And I'm not sure you're going to have them enough below grade. I know that the slope goes to the left, to the east and to the north. Sorry, east and to the south. So the fellow who wanted to build across the street, I don't think there'd be noise mitigation for him. I think it would maybe be more of a, depending on where he would build, it would be an amplifier if you've got those higher land above the fans. Good.
About 4.5
Okay.
minutes. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Plus, I want to give them an opportunity to answer your questions. I wrote them down.
Thank you.
As far as the deed goes, that was brought up several weeks ago. I can answer that one. We have had extensive talks with our attorney, and the deed restriction, while it is present, everyone's aware of it. It is between the buyer and the seller. It does not have any impact on a zoning bylaw. As far as will it delay bringing revenue into the town, there is no revenue to the town right now. So until it's built, there will be no revenue to the town. Actually, until it's built, operational and selling, there'll be no revenue to the town. So the town, whether this is approved or not, in terms of revenue, has nothing to lose currently because there's nothing coming in currently. Whether or not there's legal action brought by others, again, that's between the seller and the purchaser and the other purchasers and the seller. Town's not on the hook for any expense at all. So, we would not have moved forward if we didn't have assurances from our attorneys that we were in the right. One of the responses I had to the same email that Jim responded to with Mr. Greenwell was, what I can assure you is that with every question, concern, or anything that was brought to light, as a board, we have given it careful consideration. We've asked questions. We've asked the experts. None of this is conjecture, or we're not making this up. I'm going to the experts and saying, okay, this is what was raised. What are our options? And we're just weighing the pros and cons. That's all we're doing. So as far as your other questions, I'll defer back to Jim. Bill's first question was regarding plantings. Could we go with more native plantings? I think you already answered that before. You said you're open to whatever as far as plantings.
It's really a design intent. If the board just, and it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, if, the way I work is if you said to me, that's what we want, then I'll make it happen. I don't need a condition to make that happen. But if you want to make it a condition, it's just that's a tough one to word, honestly, because it's subjective. So, but there's no hesitation on the applicant. We've talked about it. There's no hesitation on the applicant's part to provide whatever landscaping buffer. It's not really an expense. It's really just a design intent. If you want us to try to replicate the forest, we can do that. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with it at all. So I don't think it's really a non-issue. It's really just a case of what the town would like there, and we'll provide it.
Okay, thank you. And his other question had to do with the 8.3 acres. His assumption was the additional clearing had to do with ample sun to the greenhouses. I know you answered part of that before when some of it is the
Yeah,
retention ponds.
Because the greenhouses have supplemental light, we don't have to do, I do solar fields too, and we have to do a ton of clearing for solar. That's not a design parameter here. As the sun gets higher, we're able to take advantage of it, and in instances where we can't, we can supplement. So that's not a problem for us, and we don't any clearing beyond what's shown on the plan would require additional permission. So we're not looking for anything beyond what's shown.
Okay. And your last one was about odor. Were you able to read what was posted on the town website?
I didn't see any data about odor.
Yeah.
I may have missed it. I
Yeah.
thought I read through all.
No, one of the things that Steve said, and I believe he's on the Zoom call tonight, is he was going to go back and approach some of the clients that they've had and get permission to release data because it is proprietary. So is Steve from Purico on there, Sean?
He should be. Steve McCaffrey.
Steve, could you comment on that?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So we did go back to a number of our clients. The ones based in Canada were not open to disclosing information. The most recent one that we've dealt with was amenable to sharing information, but they have only just installed it, so they don't yet have their personal disclosure to make. So as that moves forward, I should be able to get some information from them back to you. And hopefully we will have that facility fully online within the next week.
Okay, thank you.
The decibel levels would be as low as any fan available that fits our needs. I'm not able to quote what the number is at the moment, but as we had answered it in the question, direct drive, a number of things. So our procurement effort will be to give us the CFM rating and the lowest decibel ratings possible.
I understand you want to have the most efficient. You have noise, the waste, the energy. You want to have that, but it's what the actual level is, and who will hear it from their homes and where. That's
Yeah.
unknown. I know you're doing the best you can, and it makes sense financially and neighbor-wise.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, I believe John had his hand up in the back.
Okay, John Field, Root Hill. So you talked about moving earth. We're talking about 1,000 loads loaded. Doesn't matter if you're hauling in and then back hauling. It's still 1,000 loads. So the question is how will you protect that oil and stone road? Which way will you be going in and out? I don't know if that really matters. It's kind of in the center of the road. So it's 1,000 loads. So that would be my question. How are you going to protect the road? And the planting, I know there's a lot of talk about planting. It's really not necessary. You're only talking about 4 or 5 acres, 6, 7 acres. There's enough seed bank in the soil to replace anything that you cut. And unless is there any wetlands restoration, or is it just planting to make people happy?
It's just planting to make people
It's
happy.
a waste of money. Could whatever you budget for that, could it be held by the town to fix the road? I mean, you hit a pothole 1,000 times,
So,
it's going to be a big hole.
so I've got an answer for you on that.
Okay.
If you're ready.
Oh, not yet. And then with the planting, like if you're really going to plant, you really have to plant native trees, no cultivars, no subspecies, because you're just going to be bringing in invasives inevitably. Well, I think planting's a waste of time. So that's it.
So as it relates to the road condition, almost every not every project, but many projects that I work on, we have discussions about, receiving roadway traffic. So we have a very standard procedure where this road requires, obviously, if you've been out there, requires improvement first. So this road would be improved. You would document the level of improvement. And the way you do that is with video and photographs. And then you monitor it. And then when the job is built, you go out and you do it again. And then you look at that and you compare the two. And basically the applicant is required to bring the road back to the standard it was before they started. So that's very standard requirement. And I think that would be acceptable in any case. So you typically would run, you would establish the route, which I haven't established. It may depend on who you hire to do the work, on what way they go and where their soil sources are. But we could establish that route and then assess it in town and manage that. But it's a very reasonable request, and we do it quite often.
Thank you.
One other point to that, the host community agreement defines 3% of our revenue up to 5 million. And the theory of it, not necessarily the practice of it, is to reimburse the town for any costs of our presence. And that will certainly include roads.
You don't want to use that money to fix a road that you guys break, right? So that's the whole point, right? We want to have that money to fix other things in town, not go in behind you guys and patch in the road. So, right?
Again, the state of Massachusetts is defining, it's not a statute per se, but generally speaking, there needs to be a correlation between the cost of our presence, the actual cost of our presence, and the expenditures of the town. But again, Jim is talking about standard procedures, and we certainly will be sure that the road is in good conditions.
Right. Well, we had the pipeline, an extension of the pipeline going on Cold Spring Road, and that wasn't 1,000 trucks, and they put a hurting on that road. And I know there's something, it's going to be fixed by the pipeline.
It is fixed.
Or there's some money. Okay. And so are we going to get anything like that from you guys?
I'm not sure.
So, yeah.
In addition to the host community agreement, the funds, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So the host community agreement, the funds, you're saying that could be used to fix a road if it gets destroyed by you guys building the facility?
It should be used. It's
Okay.
almost required by law.
Right, but that's kind of counterproductive.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's just how the regs are written.
Okay.
Good. Okay, next question was Ed right here. Hang on, Ed. You'll get a microphone. Please state your name for the record.
Ed Brosman, 32 West Hubbard Road. I have a question about the people, the names that you provided of all the principals in the company. And other than the names and addresses, in general, I don't think we know very much about this group. And in any reasonable due diligence, you'd want to know who you're doing business with and what their backgrounds are and what their track records are in business. Would SAMA be against giving us time to fully vet the business track records of the individuals? And then along with that, the Cannabis Control Commission requests that you provide the names of people who have a 10% or more interest in the enterprise. Would you also be willing to tell us who those are as well at the same time?
Well, let me answer your second question first. There's only 4 principals in the firm. There's no one else that owns any other percentage of the business.
Okay.
And the Cannabis Control Commission does a very complete vetting, including Corey, I'm not sure that the Corey, but a good portion of this will become public record. Whatever is permitted by law to disclose.
So is your answer that you don't want us to give us the time to do it on our own?
I don't see this as a financial due diligence requirement for a special permit. If you were an investor, it'd be a different conversation.
Well, just as an example, if, and I don't know that this is the case, but I don't know anything about the principles. But let's say there was a series of companies that one or several of you owned, or whether together or separately, and they wound up in bankruptcy, or they wound up in various issues in terms of how it affected the towns that they were in. I would think that the select board and the town would want to know that. If it comes out that you all have sterling business track records, then that's great. But right now, we have no idea what that is. We don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. And if I understand what you're saying is that you don't think we should ask.
But the state mandated Cannabis Control Commission does an exhaustive due diligence.
Yes, but that's all after the fact of us approving or not approving your special permit.
No, it's before.
Right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're not incurring any costs prior to our being in operation, and
well, it has nothing to do with incurring costs. It has to me. Do we want to know who we're doing business with? That's what I'm asking. And right now, we really don't know. I'm not saying you're a terrible businessman or anything like that, but I don't know.
Look, I think I understand what you're saying, but I mean, this is not a credit underwriting. It's a special permit process, and there are, as I say, I don't see this as an integral part of a special permit.
Alex, I would ask you to respect the other people's time and quit interrupting everyone. Thank you.
But I do understand what Alex is saying. It is a big enterprise, and we're just going on this. Take your word that you guys are great businessmen. You got great records, and we have no concerns. That's basically what you're saying. And you're not going to give us the time to find out. So you've already answered me. We don't need to beat this to death. Relative to the deed issues, John or George said that, and I think Brian said as well, that the town council indicated that this issue was between the buyers and the sellers. And I understand that. Do you, as SAMA, think you have a deed issue and your ability to build this on that land?
With all due respect, Ed, this is not the forum to express anything with regards to the deed. So I have no comment about it. I don't think this is the place to discuss it.
Well, I can't force you to take an opinion. But the one thing about the town council is that he didn't express an opinion, as far as I know, Brian, that the validity of the deed restriction was not valid. He just said it wasn't an issue for the town. Is that right?
That's correct. I asked him if it had any bearing on whether or not we should hold a special permit hearing or make a decision in regards to a special permit. And he said, no, that's strictly between the buyer and the seller. It has no bearing on the town zoning bylaws. So that's where we're moving forward with.
Gotcha. And there'll be other people who will ask this question and have asked this question without really getting, well, you answered me. You're not going to make comments, so okay.
Sean, does Bill Heck have his hand up? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, he does now. He's one of our partners.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay.
Mute your mic.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate to you in your questioning of our prior business, that the CCC would not allow anyone, I mean, it is as critical and as thorough as anything. Now, I own and operate assisted living communities, and I have in the state of Florida and in the state of Virginia, and that is a rigorous underwriting that requires due diligence because you're caring for the elders in our community. The CCC makes that look delicate. And so if your concern is whether or not we are upstanding business people, you can rely on the state to peel that onion as deeply as possible. And that's all I have to say on that issue.
I got you. I understand what you're saying, and you let us know that you really don't want us to take the time to look into it ourselves. So, okay, I got it.
Thank you for your response.
The last thing I want to ask is that, and this is about the noise issue, and several people have asked this, Bill's asked this, and after it's all said and done, the answer is that you don't really have to worry about this. So we aren't going to provide any more information. We don't think we can do any modeling. We're not going to give you any kind of relative decibel range. And so trust us, it won't be a problem. Is that it? Is that where we are? I mean, we know there's going to be noise of some type. The question is how much and how bad and how many people will hear it.
I think the counter to that is the amount of information that we have provided already, and the agreement that if it's inadequate in reality, we'll continue to adjust it until it is not a problem to anyone. I think George mentioned it's a very complex topic that I think we have addressed very comprehensively. And to be redundant, we're not going anywhere. If it's not enough, we'll be there to continue to address it, whatever it takes.
Well, this is sort of in the same category as the odor mitigation system, where I've been in sales and marketing 25 years of my life in some pretty sophisticated industries and products. And this is the first time that I've ever seen a situation where the company that's providing or wants to provide us with a product or a facility can't give us, I'm not looking for proprietary information. I don't care about the proprietary information, but to give us at least one, and maybe there's more, maybe there's not any, that in this particular situation with greenhouses, outdoor greenhouses, that this will work and you've proven that it'll work. And again, I don't need to know the particular details of it, but I'd like to talk to someone who was using this and saying, yeah, this is great. You guys have nothing to worry about. You can stand right in front of Abbey Road and you won't smell a thing. That's what I'm asking. And I think other people are asking the same thing. And the answers we get have nothing to do with answering that question, quite frankly, in my view.
Have you visited the website and read the
Yes.
articles and
Yep.
everything?
But from what does that tell me about who's using it in Massachusetts or who's using it in the United States today and has a record of that this product has a record of doing what you say it is?
Well, I'll let Steve answer this in a moment, but
Okay.
let's remember that cannabis specifically
Exactly.
is in its nascent stages. Number one. Number two, the odor themselves are less complex and just less complex than lots of other odors that I'm sure Steve can speak towards. So,
But I mean, to a certain extent, on the other side of this, that I would,
Ed?
I'm sorry, yeah?
I've given you like 12 minutes so far,
Okay.
respectfully, because I know you'll just keep going. So let's give some other people a chance. Carl, you had your hand up.
My question's to the select board, Carl Nett, Town Hill Road. My question's in the spirit of clarifying what we're here to do tonight. I'm under the impression that the purpose of the special permit hearing in the board's deliberation process is to determine whether the special permit application submitted by SAMA is consistent with the existing town bylaws. Am I correct on that point?
You are correct on that point. It is our responsibility and it is our duty to make sure that we hear from everyone expressing either their concerns, their questions, or either their support or non-support of it, though.
But my point related to that would be things like, a potential legal issue on the deed. It's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's not relevant. So Brenda, you were next, and then I think Cindy after that. So please state your name for the record.
Okay, Brenda Larson. It was just that in the beginning, I believe you said we had 3 minutes to speak so everyone could speak. And we were kind of going beyond that. And we're also being very redundant with things that have already been asked. So just out of respect for everyone, just leave it to the 3 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. After Cindy, I'm going to go to Zoom. Is there some questions on Zoom, Sean? One? Okay. Okay.
Hi again, everyone. Cindy True, 103 Town Hill Road. I had a follow-up to some questions that John Field was asking regarding road maintenance and construction. So we're looking at hundreds of dump trucks traveling up and down Abbey Road, somewhere between 700 and 1,000 dump trucks. I was curious about the condition of Abbey Road and the preparation of Abbey Road and the maintenance of Abbey Road through this 9 to 12 month process. 9 to 12 months is what was estimated for construction last week when I asked a question regarding gravel. So we all know currently Abbey Road is hardly passable to one vehicle. And I wanted to find out again about the maintenance in regards to the width of Abbey Road. And also the staging of all of these vehicles. I mean, there's no way you can, I don't know, maybe once the land is clear, you can park a few dump trucks up there. But I'm wondering how much thought has gone into the traffic of construction vehicles and where these vehicles will wait for their turn to go up the road. I think we've all passed asphalt operations where trucks are just rolling in and out constantly. The difference is that they move along a stretch of road. This is going to be consistent traffic for months up and down this same path into the woods. And on that note, I don't know if there's an opening for me to ask the select board to, if I can propose a condition to the special permit that if they do want to widen the road, that the road is widened on their lot 8 piece of property and not directly to the north of Abbey Road on my 7-acre property.
So in layman's terms, to answer that, Cindy, the town owns a certain distance from the center of every roadway in town. I don't know specifically what it is for Abbey Road. We will get that information for you. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I'd like to, sort of publicly just make the request that, again, I have 7 acres and these guys seem to be looking at a lot of acreage. It would be great if I could keep my land as much as it is. I'm greatly concerned about my quality of life here. So
I totally understand, and should this be voted through, we will check into that. What we can't do is take private land, although in this case it would be Sama's, right? So, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, but I've written down your concerns for sure. Okay. Jim, do you want to respond to?
Well, I would just add that the road right now is currently kind of hugging the far side of the right of way from your house. And that right of way is 50 feet wide. And the current road is probably 14 or 15 feet wide. I didn't measure it, but that's what it looks like. I would suggest that you would want a minimum of an 18-foot traveled way with turnouts based on its length. Probably one at least, maybe two. As far as trucks, you'd be surprised. I mean, if you had, 4 or 5 trucks working here, doing loops, and you did 20 trips a day, it would go by, 35, 40 days. This is over, work days. But you won't have some excessive amount of vehicles parked on site. You'll have a local contractor working here who has 4 or 5 trucks. And they'll be rotating through. So you'll have a truck every 30 minutes or something like that, 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Zoom, Sean.
Okay, first question is from Hal Holt. Hal, please unmute your mic.
Hal, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, bad connection here. Hal Holt, 75 Town Hill Road. I'm the only direct abutter, having purchased lot 1 from Franklin Woods, aka Mike Sanders. I've also owned my house at 75 Town Hill Road since the late 80s, 1989, I think. And I just put my check in the mail for my real estate taxes this morning, as I have about 65 previous times. And it occurs to me if I had sent that first check to Edna and someone said, Hal, 2021, the town's going to need help with their taxes and they're going to approve a project right over the hill, an industrial sized cannabis growing facility, I would have said, thanks, first check, I'll sell the land and move on. And this is exactly why Sandisfield has the issues. You're going to discourage people like me who've come to town, spent all of my adult life improving my house, adding little bits of land here and there, clearing the blowdowns, the ice storm damage. This is just heartbreaking. I have facts and figures to give you people. What I owe on that house, what I'm likely to get for it now that this proposal is on the floor. A recent market assessment, a recent appraisal. The figures are pretty impressive. And so what this proposal is doing is just dipping into my retirement. And without going into figures, it's a big, big number. The math is clear. So I know we want to be specific here. So let's take one specific point. Mr. Heck last Monday said that you can only approve the plan if the project is in harmony with the site. Well, it might be in harmony if you live on, let's say it's done, and you live on Cronk Road, and you live in Connecticut, and you drive by the end of Abbey Road a few times a week, and you never see this place. Certainly, it's in harmony. It's because it's not right there. Anyone in my house with that right over the hill, I'm going to hear it. There are quiet nights where you can hear a saw-whet owl singing by Abbey Lake from my house. I will hear that place. I'll see it, and likely I'll smell it. This idea of fanning the fumes towards the woods as if the west wind will blow it back. So take that first point as you gather later tonight and think, should we approve this application? Is it in harmony? Mr. Heck told you last Monday, it has to be in harmony. Think about that. Many technical issues. I'm not familiar with the technical issues, but there have been a lot of good arguments. I would like to bring up the deed restriction because that directly affects me. No one else speaking tonight has that restriction on their deed. My purchase and sale agreement with Mike Sanders had that restriction. The deed that's recorded in Great Barrington has that restriction. The same restriction that's on the SAMA deed. Now put yourselves in my position. I have significant assault on my finances, which I can prove by facts and figures. I'm a drowning man grasping at any flotation here. I will be forced to use that narrow issue to fight this plan. I don't want to do that. Future litigation will only drag things out, interfering with the potential revenue stream from reasonably sized growers that could build in all around town in reasonably sized places. Good neighbors that employ several people for each facility. This outsized plan just doesn't make sense. It's hastily brought forward and puts me in a position where I'm forced to become an opponent to people that I've known and respected for decades. Puts me in a very uncomfortable position. Do what's right. Deny this permit application. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Next one, Sean.
Next question is from Lorraine Greenwell. Please unmute your mic.
Please state your name for the record.
Lorraine, please unmute.
Sorry about that. There's a little bit of delay. First, it's Jay Greenwell speaking, 157 Town Hill Road. First, I would like to thank Mr. Scalise for addressing some of the questions that I raised. The discussion that he raised about moving the project to the south and out of the wetlands, raising grading issues, I understand as a land surveyor. However, that doesn't answer the bigger question, was why not reduce the scope and the size of this project to where the wetlands impacts are zero, and to where the grading is reduced, and to where the project comes more in line with the bylaws that the planning board and the select board have carefully crafted with input from the public. I myself am not anti-cannabis. I do support the bylaws. I would support the efforts of local growers on a smaller tiered level. But there are many unanswered questions, but the overarching theme here is that this project is totally out of character with the neighborhood and does not meet the criteria for the issuance of a special permit. A 105,000 square foot industrial facility does not belong in a rural residential area. It does not fall under the category of the right to farm issue, and it does not fall under what the bylaws envisioned under the category of a commercial greenhouse. In your bylaws, you have to demonstrate that the use is going to not be detrimental to adjacent uses or the established or future character of the neighborhood. So that the fact that some of the lots around here are vacant does not absolve you of the responsibility of maintaining the rural residential character of the properties. But I also want to ask a question. Has this specific project been referred to the planning board or to the Board of Health for their input? And I would like to ask the board members if they're aware of the language binding the special granting authority, in this case the select board, to the obligation that you have to refer this to the planning board and to the Board of Health, and to give them 35 days to prepare reports. And those two boards are required by your laws to provide written reports regarding this application. Has that been done? And if so, why are those reports not on the website for public inspection? And absent any written report, your board cannot take any action on this special permit request. I urge you deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. That has not been done. In my 3 years on the board, with every special permit we've heard, which there's been a half a dozen or so, that has never been done. I would defer back to the clerk, Dolores, but I am not aware of that condition. Dolores?
We get the special permit application. On the very day that we receive it, I send it to the planning board, the conservation commission, the board of health, as well as the select board. So they get it the same day we get it. And I post it on the website. We notify abutting towns. We notify the abutters 300 feet and 300 feet to those abutters. So everyone is notified. I don't know why they don't. I don't know why they don't give you a report. We have heard from them in the past on other applications if there was an issue.
I would like to read for you, Section 10, Special Permits, Item C. Upon the receipt of a request for a special permit, the SPGA shall notify the planning board and the Board of Health of the request, and said boards shall respond to the SPGA within 35 days by written report of their finding. It's not discretionary. You must send it out, and they must reply in writing.
So if they were notified and they do not reply in writing, what does the bylaw state is the course of action then?
It's up to you and your attorney to determine, but it's an obligation.
Okay, so Jonathan Silverstein, our attorney, is signing back onto Zoom. He had to jump off for a second. And when he does, I would like you to ask him that question, Jay, because I'm curious to the answer myself.
Good.
I'm just texting him now.
Yes. Jonathan, we see you in the call. Please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
We can, Jonathan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Greenwell to repeat his question in regards to our special permit granting authority, our process, and review that is in our bylaws. Jay, please go ahead and state that question again, ask that question again.
Thank you. I asked, are the board members aware of the language binding the special permit granting authority to the obligation to refer it to the planning board and the Board of Health, and the fact that those two boards are required by law to provide written reports regarding the application? And I said that absent any written reports, the select board cannot take an action on this special permit request. Section 10C specifically states, upon the request for a special permit, the SPGA shall notify the planning board and the Board of Health. And apparently that has been done. But the boards shall respond to the SPGA within 35 days thereafter by a written report of their findings in respect to their specific fields of responsibilities. Now, the reason for that is clear, is that the select board is charged with the financial obligations of running the town, but the planning board is the board with the expertise to interpret the plans, to provide critique and comment, specific modifications to the plan that may make sense from a planning perspective, and how to mitigate impact on adjoining owners, perhaps with landscaping, not necessarily through the site, but along the roadway, or lighting, or how to interpret those things. And apparently that item that is required has not been complied with, to provide written reports from the planning board and the Board of Health regarding this application.
Jonathan, my question was simply, if we do not receive those reports, what are our obligations as a special permit granting authority? So the notifications have been given in the 3 years that I've been on the select board. We've sat over, I think, a half a dozen special permits, and never once have I received a report from the Board of Health or the Planning Board regarding those special permits. we moved forward with the process. I'm wondering what our legal obligations are here.
So your legal obligation was to make sure that notification was issued. As a general rule, when there is an obligation of a municipal board to make some sort of report or take some sort of other action, unless there's a consequence stated in the statute, or in this case in the bylaw at issue, it's considered what's known as directory and not mandatory. So I'll give you an example. In Chapter 48, Section 5, the State Zoning Act requires that the planning board hold a public hearing before town meeting can vote on a proposed zoning bylaw. It also states that the planning board has to issue a report to town meeting before town meeting can vote on that bylaw, or that 21 days has to pass prior to or subsequent to the hearing and prior to town meeting vote. Now, I give that example because the statute specifically states that unless one of those two conditions is met, that 21 days passes or the planning board issues a report, no vote may take place. Similarly, in the Zoning Act, there are all sorts of provisions that state that certain applications will be deemed what's known as constructively approved unless an action is taken by the reviewing board within a certain period of time, including special permits. So if no public hearing is held within 65 days, and if no decision is issued within 90 days after the public hearing, the special permit will be deemed approved. There's a consequence stated in the statute. Your bylaw doesn't have any such consequence or any such prohibition of action absent the receipt of the reports that were referenced. And you can see why that would be. That would potentially put the special permit granting authority in the position of constructively approving an application under the statute, because it's being put in a position where it has to wait for this report that it has no ability to ensure is going to be issued. Conversely, if that weren't the case, you would be giving these other boards the ability to pocket veto an application by simply refusing to issue a report. And the refusal to issue that report isn't even appealable by an applicant. These are very common types of provisions. They're obviously intended to make sure that relevant town boards and officials are given notice of an application and the opportunity to comment. If they choose not to, there's no legal reason that the special permit granting authority is held hostage to that and is unable to act.
So in layman's terms, we're able to move forward with the special permit process, whether we received a report or not. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that the board should request from the planning board, who is the board that would be the most able to review the plans with an eye to critiquing the design, the layout, etc. I think that for this application in particular, the town board, the select board should request respectfully, and then, if not receiving a written report, then act. I think what's probably happened is that there's just been a failure to comply with this idea of having a written report addressing it from the planning board and the Board of Health.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, hang on one second. Go ahead, John.
Planning board, we did receive the reports from Dolores on the 4th of March, and we discussed them last week. Every single page. We went through the permit packet, and we decided as a planning board that we did not need to write a report.
Thank you. Next question on Zoom, Sean.
We have Aviva Cormier. Please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record.
My name is Aviva Cormier, 64 Town Hill Road. I have a question for the board concerning if they could clarify your process in determining if the facility would be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. So if members of the neighborhood, including myself, attest that it would cause irreparable damage and destruction to the neighborhood, how does that factor into your decision over SAMA's statement that it would not? There are people, there are families next to the property. I was raised there. It's not a deserted place, as it seems to be made out to be. It's a wonderful place to raise a family, to be raised, as I was. It won't be wonderful if this facility is put in. If members of the neighborhood, the people who live directly next to it, say that it would be detrimental to the character, how are you going about to approve this? Again, so my question is, while I understand the need of the town to make money, if it impacts the neighborhood, does the income for the town outweigh the statements by the families that live in the adjacent area? How are you as a board determining if it would be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you, Aviva. This is Brian O'Rourke. I'll respond first, and then if either George Riley or Mark Newman would like to comment, I'll pass it on to them. As I stated last Monday night to Mr. Reederman, you know, everybody's opinion, everybody's comments, everybody's feelings, everybody's emotions are important to us. We all live here. You know, we love this town. That's part of the reason why I ran for the board. Your opinions weigh heavily on us, or myself in particular, I will say. And I understand your concerns. I understand the wording in the bylaw. I understand how you feel about what the potential of having this in that area would do to the neighborhood. Quite frankly, some of the things I look at are what is there currently. You know, I made a comment to my wife the other day that, you know, since the day that the town incorporated in 1762, there hasn't been one house built in that first 1,500 feet of Abbey Road, which one town resident last week didn't even know where Abbey Road was because he thought it was East Hubbard. So, you know, there's all kinds of factors that weigh in. What is a neighborhood? I heard a gentleman last week, he's here, I'll say his name, Alex Bowman, said this is better suited for the industrial park in Sandisfield. I'm still trying to figure out where that is because we don't have one. You know, we don't have any zoning. Myself in particular, I bought my land on West Street in 2004. Some of you in this room might know this and on Zoom, most of you probably don't. My house is directly next door to Berkshire Fireworks, okay? The day I went and looked at my property, Dave Lewis, who has since passed away, came over and introduced himself to me. And he said, I just want you to know I own Berkshire Fireworks. You looking at the land? I said, yes, I am. And he said, what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm going to build a house here. I have a wife and 6 kids, and this is where we're going to put down roots. I just timed myself out. So he said, well, you know, you need to know this is what I do. I'm a commercial fireworks presentator. I don't know what you'd want to call them, display. And he said, you know, I have a container that's about 20 feet off your potential property line that's got 10,000 pounds of high explosives in it. How do you feel about that? And I said, Dave, are you in compliance with all the rules and regulations? He said, I am. I go, then I don't have a problem with it. I didn't buy my property to tell you what to do with yours. That's not why I'm here. Now, that's my personal opinion. I did state to him, should you not be in compliance, I am going to be the worst neighbor you've ever had. So all I ask is that you're in compliance. 17 years later, they're still in compliance. You know, I check with Chief Morrison every year. Did they pass the ATF inspection? Yes, they did. Okay, great. I don't have a problem. That's how I weigh my decisions. I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I've been presented when I purchased my property with a with a neighbor that honestly, when I first looked at it, I had no idea that Berkshire Fireworks even existed. I didn't know what he was all about. They've been a great neighbor. They've been a great neighbor. We haven't really had any issues at all to speak of. So I'm going to pass it over to George Riley. I hope that gives you some idea of where I'm coming from and how I look at things. And your opinions are important to me.
There is a statement that I'd like to make about development in general. I don't think I'll make it right now. I'll reserve to do that a few minutes later. But I do want to make a statement about that.
Mark Newman has no comment at this time. So if you'd like to comment back, that would be great. If not, I'll pass the time on to someone else. Sean, did she indicate that she'd? Okay. I'll take another question from Zoom and then I'm going to go back to the audience after that. No more questions? Okay.
Hi, Barbara Cormier, 2 Norfolk Road, Sandisfield. I just want to make the selectmen aware, I'm sure you are, we have a group in this town called Connect Sandisfield. And it's an active group of people who live here year-round, who live here part-time, and they're all members of the town. And they did a little survey on Connect Sandisfield. And it was not opinions, it was a simple question. Do you support SAMA? Do you not? Out of 86 people, 84 supported it strongly. 2 people voted no. I do have all the names here. If you'd like me to read them, I could read that to you, or you could take this and read it on your own. But it just showed there is a lot of support for this project in the town. So I think you should be aware of it and understand there are people who appreciate all the hard work you've done, who appreciate all the questions you've asked, and who are in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. If you want to pass it up for the board to read, I'm aware of it. I'm a member of Connect Sandisfield. So they've seen it. Okay. So thank you. So it's 7:26. I said 30 minutes. We've gone an hour. I'll go with 2 more questions if there's any in the audience. And then, yes, Alex.
Alex Bowman, 132 New Hartford Road. I think I heard Mr. Silverstein say that you didn't have to decide for 90 days. Is that true?
Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yeah, the state statute gives the board 90 days after the close of the public hearing to render a decision.
So would that give the town the ability to vote at all town meeting about what the bylaws should be that would help set the conditions for this project?
For me or for Attorney Silverstein?
For the board.
So again, I'll answer as a single board member, not as the entire board. It would give us the ability to put off the vote until the annual town meeting. It will. I have a question for you. What if no bylaw gets passed?
If no bylaw gets passed, I think it's under your best interest to understand what are the best conditions to set to protect the neighborhood.
So whether we vote tonight, in a week, or in a month, if no,
you could have more information after the special town meeting about what the town finds to be.
Hang on, guys, please. So I don't understand. If we wait till May 15th, no bylaw passes.
You'd be in the same position you'd be in tonight.
Right. So we
But
waited.
you would have the opportunity to have more information from the townspeople, which is what a lot of people requested. And that, since he said that nothing will be built for 12 to 18 months, I'm wondering if there is a reason to rush it, or we could actually get more information from the town meeting.
There's no reason to rush it. I mean, we've been in this process for months as it is. So, nobody's rushed anything. I think we're in about our 5th or 6th month of discussions now. So yeah, I appreciate the question. I don't think anybody's rushing anything at this point. If we were, we would have voted last week. So.
And the other thing is, I do find that this project is detrimental to the abutters. I do think that their land value will go down. It seems like we're essentially shifting the land value of any abutters into a impact fee that just comes back to the town. So you're essentially taking money from the abutters and shifting it to the town as an impact fee.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Up front here. Thanks, Joanne.
Bill Taylor, 7 Hartford Road. The one bit of information that would come in would be some of that data about the odor mitigation, were you to delay. So that's just one advantage to doing that.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I'll do one more comment, Mr. Reederman.
Hi, John Reederman. I own the land directly across from SAMA. So I would like to address this question of the character of the neighborhood. Is this going to be detrimental? I know for a lot of folks, it's kind of an abstract idea. Well, it's, it's not right in front of me. It's in the neighborhood. So it's academic, but for me, for my wife, our property will be literally yards away from the security fencing and the security lighting and the security cameras, the greenhouses, the fans, the odor, etc. Will literally be along the whole row of those greenhouses is our property, and we haven't built anything on this yet. And we've owned this land for many years, and I just love the land, and we've been dreaming about getting a house on this land, and we kind of come to the conclusion lately, we're not getting any younger. Maybe we should sell a lot. Maybe we should sell a few acres, and where we would definitely sell would be right across where we would have, right across from SAMA. And, I had to agree with Mr. Holt. I think it's really given our property a hit. Certainly taking away the character that exists now, which it seems Sam is kind of taking the position, well, there's nothing there now, so there is no neighborhood, there is no character. But really, this is land that will be the property value will be severely diminished, and our desire to live there will be, I think, negated. I don't really think I don't think we would want to live right across from this industrial site. What's now a really little country quiet road will be an industrial site, and that would change everything for us. So that's how I feel about the change in character. And again, I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Yep, I will. So we have one?
Yeah, we have one on Zoom. Salinarella.
Okay, and this will be the last one, and then I'm going to close the public hearing. So.
Okay, please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Selena Rella. I'm an abutter of the land on Lot 4 off Town Hill Road. I prepared a statement, but I don't know how compelling it's going to be. But we purchased this land officially January 5th. We looked at it right after getting married on October 3rd. On October 12th, we viewed the land multiple times. It was said to us by Mike Sanders of Franklin Woods Investments that he couldn't guarantee, but he could bet that the land behind us would be donated to the state. And this wasn't like he said it one time and, we couldn't really hear and we really latched onto it. This was said multiple times by himself. We echoed it because it was really the major selling point of the land for us. And we were like, oh, great, state land all over. My husband and I are both in the food industry in New York City, and we are really hard workers and really struggling. As I'm sure you can imagine if you are reading the news. And the plans for this land were to build a house and, rent it if we couldn't live there, ideally live there. And we're not anti-cannabis. We assumed that our neighbors would have the max 6 plants per person. And, everyone around us could be growing their own supply of cannabis. And that's not a problem because it's on, several small scales. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of the details of local government. And there's a lot of jargon I'm learning real quickly, but I didn't receive an official notice about this until, 2 weeks ago. And the only reason I heard it all is because a concerned neighbor stalked me on the internet and found me. And luckily I've been able to try to learn and keep up, but none of this seems forthright. And, this land that we decided to purchase and try to build our futures and, maybe we would open a little general store and we're trying to make a hot sauce company and we're trying to think of all of the ways that we could invest in this area, with respect to the current culture and, the people around us. It's so shocking that seemingly the total opposite situation would be coming at us. And it's been a real dig to try to get more information. And I know that all of these plans and more information since the last town meeting have come up, but it still doesn't seem sufficient. I am still really concerned that the little money that we decided to invest in Sandisfield is going to be lost. And and we're just like two kids for all intents and purposes, but I keep hearing from other people in the town that, their whole lives have gone towards investing in this area. And it's just heartbreaking that, it keeps being written off as, there's nothing there. Well, there's nothing there yet, but, that doesn't mean it's not someone's money and investment and plans for their future and plans for their retirement. And I would love to see small time cannabis farmers and other chefs trying to use the agricultural rights in this area and really try to build the town and bring money. But I can't support such a massive operation. And I hope you understand where that's coming from.
Thank you, Selena. I appreciate that. And, to hear your time frame, honestly, was a little disturbing for me because you closed on your land. I wrote down on January 5th. SAMA held a community outreach meeting on December 12th. So I don't want to speak ill about the seller of the property, but if he led you to believe that land was going to be donated to the state behind you, I'm pretty sure he knew ahead of time that wasn't the case, because 30 days earlier, there was, already paperwork filed and legal notices taken out for that particular property.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get the interaction that you had about the fireworks. And I got the specific opposite. Yeah. And I do feel that the other abutters had similar, if not the same, interaction. I mean, no mention of a greenhouse at all. Someone's going to grow peppers behind you. This is
right. I'm very sorry to hear that he wasn't forthcoming Mr. Sanders with information to you, because that's not the right way to be. But I will thank you. I've written down some notes about what you had to say, and I am going to take one more comment from Cindy, and then we are going to pass it off to the select board for their comments.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment because I know you were looking to be done with comments. So yeah, I wrote a bunch of things down too. But I have a lot of different thoughts on this, but one question I have is, what is the purpose of zoning bylaws? What's the point? Why do we have them? Is it to protect the interests of the citizens of a town? Is it?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. And so if a major point of a special permit, if a major criterion of a special permit is to protect the interest of the neighborhood, and to make sure that any applicants, any projects are in harmony with the existing use of a neighborhood. And we've heard from Hal Holt, and we've heard from me, and we've heard from John Riedemann, we've heard from people, Selena Rella, and we've heard from all the people who live next door to this project, not people who live a mile and a half away. I mean, yes, we've heard from them too, but it seems to me that if the people of the neighborhood who are in direct contact with this project speak up, emotionally or not emotionally, the fact is that we have special permit criteria in place to protect the interests of people who live in town and to make sure that incoming projects are in harmony with the existing use of the neighborhood. Given all of that, I would like to urge the select board to deny the special permit, and let's hear from the voters and let's hear from people in town. We're only a few weeks away from the town meeting. This is too quick. This is too big. This is a huge project for Sandisfield. When you take an industrial size project or a project of this size and you put it in a currently rural and residential neighborhood, it by definition changes the character of the neighborhood from a rural and residential neighborhood to an industrial business, whatever you want to call it, neighborhood. It inherently changes the character of the neighborhood and will and has already changed my usage of my land that I have worked very hard for. 7-something acres. Maybe it's not a lot in comparison to what's at stake next door here. It means the world to me and to my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. George, you wanted to comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Should part of the public hearing comment or as a select board opinion? Because I just want to follow the proper procedure here. Okay.
So we've been asked what criteria what criteria do we as individuals use to determine the definition of the word detrimental? But this has come up several times now. Needless to say, or maybe I should say it, I've been thinking a lot recently about development. Not just this development, but development in general. Most townsfolk are pretty strongly pro-development, but until now, little thought has been given to the fact that all development comes at a cost. In fact, I would say all development is destructive. All development is detrimental. Even a single-family house involves cutting of trees, disturbance of wildlife, grading, excavation, months of heavy equipment and loud noises, etc., etc. And then after it's finished, there's noise, pollution, trash, odors, disturbance of wildlife, and disturbance of neighbors, traffic, use of energy and town services, and often, in addition, the financial burden on our school. Logging, our number one enterprise, often involves removing century-old trees, our most important defense against climate change. And when these critical town resources are destroyed, how much revenue does the town receive in return? Not 1 penny. I find it inconsistent that so many folks protesting SAMA said nothing when Yanner Park on Town Hill Road was heavily logged, said nothing when the previous owner of SAMA's land recently logged over 250 acres just north of Abbey Road. A solid year's worth of chainsaws roaring and removing literally thousands of 100-year-old trees, non-stop logging trucks filled with wood going up and down Town Hill Road. And then after making far more money on the logging than he paid for the land and paying the town zero, subdivided it into 16 lots or 18 lots along Cronk and Town Hill Roads, meaning eventually 18 houses, each with a long gravel driveway, excavation, more logging, more noise, more pollution, etc., etc. Where were all these Town Hill Road people when all this was going on literally under their noses? I'm not saying we should ignore the costs of SAMA's proposed development. I'm asking, why don't we give all development the same scrutiny and concern for our environment, our enjoyment of nature, our planet's future? I'm all in favor of putting a host of conditions and restrictions on the SAMA project to protect our ecosystem and our health. But why not impose similar restrictions to limit or balance the inevitable destruction of every kind of development in town? I haven't seen any evidence that would show me that there's a significant difference between a 100,000 square foot greenhouse operation and 5 20,000 foot greenhouse operations. This is a moment of awareness. This project has obviously woken everyone up to what development means. We talk about development and everybody thinks development is a great thing. Well, guess what? It has a downside. But what I worry, perhaps even more than what would happen if this project goes forward, I worry that this moment of awareness that is here right now in the town will fade. That once this issue is over, we'll all go back to sleep and no change will occur. I worry that future select boards, in the absence of concerns by the townspeople, will grow lax in their oversight of this and of all development projects. And we will continue to ignore the hundreds of less visible or smaller scale destructions of our town's environment. The select board doesn't usually, nor is it meant to, get out in front of these issues. It's meant to be aware of and reflect the concerns of the town. If the people don't care about an issue, it's difficult for the select board to do anything about it. So we've woken up. And are we now going to go back to sleep when this is over? That's my question.
Thank you, George. Okay, at this time, I am going to close the public hearing and I am going to make a motion to vote. If I make that motion, do I have a second? And okay, I have a second from Mark Newman, Selectman Newman. So now we are going to move into discussion. There's been talk of special permit conditions. Selectman Riley, I believe you have some that you would like to discuss. Is that the case?
there's been dialogue between myself and town council. Because of the open meeting laws, we've been very much constrained in our ability to discuss this among the three of us. But town council has provided the select board with a draft of special permit conditions under which, if a special permit is granted, which SAMA would have to abide by. There's five pages of conditions, and I'm not sure that we want to read them all. I would just go over the headlines. The plans and application materials that the application has submitted are incorporated as part of the special permit. Any material divergence from such plans and materials shall require modification of the special permit. The provisions of the host community agreement are incorporated. If the town prevails any action to enforce any provision, the applicant shall be required to pay the town's costs of such action. Setback distance shall be 75 feet, measured in a straight line as the shortest distance between the establishment buildings and nearest property line.
Okay, George, so I will have a couple of questions regarding these, so for discussion. So it's not necessarily opposition, it's question and trying to understand. There's been a lot of talk between last week and this week about the particular siting of the project, where it is, and what changing that siting may do or require. So I'm not opposed to the 75 feet, but I think it would be beneficial to hear from Jim Scalise as to what that may do in terms of clearing more property, cutting into more grade, either more soil, et cetera. Are you open to listening to any of that?
I just want to say that we did discuss this actually in the public hearing earlier. I asked Jim directly about that. He did express some concerns about that in terms of cutting into the grade. On the other hand, increasing the setback would eliminate the retaining wall that is now proposed along Abbey Road, because there would be a distance there now that could be used for a more gradual grade. And also this question about screening could be more adequately addressed because there would be an additional 40 feet in which to incorporate screening.
Has Jim said it will eliminate the retaining wall?
Well, let's hear what Jim has to say.
Jim, I'm going to give you the...
The first question is, it seems that there's a contradiction in what you've said. You said there's one condition that I have to follow the plans, and then you gave me a condition that says I need to change the plans. So we just need to wordsmith that so that if you require me to do this, that I have the ability to do it without requiring a whole new permit. That would be my first question. My second one is it would require really, the setback is to buildings. Is typically what dimensional requirements are under zoning. So if I assume your setback is to buildings, that means the two greenhouses closest to the road need to move. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't redesign the site on the fly. Can I move two buildings and move them out of the 75-foot setback? Yes, I can do that, but it'll require more clearing for sure. And it'll just, it'll ultimately probably push the site closer to Town Hill Road is the way it would have to go. Because if I go south, I run into a very steep grade change. I was trying to maintain as much distance from Town Hill Road as possible.
So George had made a comment that it would eliminate the need for the retaining wall. Do you see that as being the case or no?
Yeah, I could probably, well, it would certainly get shorter if not be completely removed. Yeah,
Okay.
I could save a few feet. I think it's pretty, the corner of it's fairly high, so, but you would end up, you're about 360 feet from the wetlands in that direction, is what I remember. If you're about 1,100 feet from the nearest house, from the edge of the greenhouse, about 400 feet to the wetland. So if you shifted the site towards Town Hill Road, it would be the length of a greenhouse, which I think is 145 feet. So you'd shift in that direction, about 150 feet. Not the entire site, just a group of greenhouses, and you'd have to reconfigure things a bit. It'd be a little less efficient, but it would work.
Just in terms
Thank
of your first comment about plans, there is a provision here that says final plans. At least 30 days prior to commencement of construction, the applicant shall submit a final plan set demonstrating compliance with all conditions thereof. So there is a provision in there for that.
Okay, George.
Shall we continue?
Sure.
All right, odor control technology, this is all, we're familiar with this. Basically, it says that such a manner that no odor can be detected by a person with an unimpaired and other inspector or the designee at any adjoining property.
And just to make a note, that is consistent with what it says in the HCA as well.
Correct. Then there's a security, and that basically says that that SAMA will submit a security plan to the Sandisfield Police Department, and that the Sandisfield Police Department will review this in the letter to the Select Board plan. Obviously, for confidentiality and security reasons, those measures need only be submitted to the police department, and the police department may only consult with the Sandisfield Fire Department on pertinent items as needed. So that's simply a letter from our police department saying we've looked at the details of security, and as far as we're concerned, we're okay with it. Yeah, we just need a written statement from the police department that they're in receipt of that and in approval of that.
Yes, because there was a review of the security plan at the community outreach meeting on December 12th. There was a meeting between the chief of police and Clint Wynn then
Okay.
inside the fire station. So yes, I mean, and
That's fine.
obviously that
I
needs
would
to be
just
done.
ask Clint
Yes.
to maybe reach out to Michael Morrison and confirm that, so that Mr. Morrison, Chief Morrison can give us a written report. The applicant shall be open and/or operating only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. unless otherwise determined by the Select Board. The 5,000 square foot processing facility is deemed by the board to be accessory to the cultivation of marijuana grown on site and is not authorized to process marijuana grown off site only. The applicant shall not transfer any cannabis or marijuana products to the site from any other location without express written permission. Then there's a construction bond. Prior to construction, the applicant shall provide a form of surety to cover the potential costs of repairs to Town Hill Road due to transport of materials to and from the site. The amount and form of surety shall be determined by the Select Board, which may retain an engineer or other consultants to determine the appropriate amount and form of such surety. And then design line screening.
Hold on one second, George.
Yeah.
So I have some comments on that.
Go ahead.
So, while I understand the reasoning behind it, we have never done that with any other construction project in town, including the Tennessee gas pipeline expansion. So I would be concerned of its legalities and how that would hold up if they contested it in court. We didn't do it with the logging operation. We didn't do it with the Jamie Lane development off of 23, which is in Sandisfield. We didn't do it with Franklin Woods with the 18 home sites. So,
Well, with Tennessee Gas Pipeline, we actually did demand that they repair Cold Spring Road, and that has been now paved.
We did, but we did not have them post a surety bond is what I'm getting at.
Correct.
And there is a legal argument that the purpose of the HCA is to, that's the impact fees are to cover costs such as that. So I think that there's some middle ground there to come to. Because Jim had said that, there would be video and photographs and it would be put back to its condition prior to construction. So again, in principle, I'm in total agreement, but I just want to make sure that we're completely legal and it cannot be challenged and therefore we can enforce it because we know what a nightmare it was to get Cold Spring Road paved. That was not an easy task.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. The next section is design guidelines. Screening, the establishment shall be screened year-round with dense native vegetation or security fencing from all adjoining properties and public and private ways. Vegetation clearing, the clearing of vegetation shall be limited to only that which is necessary for the construction, operation, maintenance, modification, and or removal of the establishment. And it says here, but in no case shall exceed 5 acres in total area. Now, that was when we were going by the plans, which said 4.7 acres. Today, we received the response to Mr. Greenwell's questions. And in that response, it said the total clearing area would be 8.3 acres. So this obviously would need to be modified.
And I think to go back to John Field's comment, the 4.7 acres is what's going to be gravel and not green. Outside of that, it is still green. And as John said, the native seedlings will take over as long as we're not leaving that as exposed earth or concrete. In other words, if it's back to green, you're still under that 5 acre. My only question here, again, just for clarification, this is J number 2. It kind of, if you're going to limit the vegetation clearing and only limit it to that which is necessary for construction by changing the setback requirements and pushing it further back, you're actually requiring more clearing. So
that's correct.
So item 200J is a little bit contradictory to item to D under number 1. By moving it, you're going to clear more. So I think we need to have further discussion on that.
Yeah, that's why I said this would have to be modified.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Construction site, the Massachusetts Erosion and Sediment Control Guidelines for Urban and Suburban Areas. Design guidelines shall be followed with respect to a stabilized construction entrance and other relevant construction areas. I think that's pretty straightforward. Inspections. The establishment may be inspected annually and or in response to any reasonable complaint by the building inspector, fire chief, police department, or their designees to ensure compliance with the special permit. The reasonable costs of such inspections shall be borne by the applicant, including periodic independent measurements of sound levels, subsonic vibrations, and or laboratory analysis of any effluents, odor emissions, or other discharges into the environment. Again, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Technical review, the board may engage professional and technical consultants at the applicant's expense pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 35G to assist the select board with its review of materials and to ensure compliance with this special permit. Issuance of a valid license pursuant to MGL 94G or certificate of registration pursuant to MGL C941 is a condition of the special permit. Copies of all licenses and permits issued to the applicant by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and any of its agencies shall be submitted to the select board. Then there's the next section is called renewable energy usage required. The establishment shall directly offset 100% of its electricity consumption through the purchase of renewable energy in the form of a verified subscription in the community solar system, wind or hydropower project, and or renewable energy generated on site or equivalent approved by the Sandisfield building inspector. The offset must be demonstrated by a sustainability plan approved by the Sandisfield building inspector. The establishment must keep monthly records to verify its energy use and renewable energy credit purchases, which must be disclosed to town officials upon request. This is a provision that is increasingly being required now of cannabis facilities because of the amount of energy that they're consuming and the concerns by various town and city officials across the country for what the effect that is in terms of greenhouse gases. Final plans.
So I have a
Yeah.
question on that. Do we follow that practice as a town?
We do, actually. The town purchases 100% wind energy.
Okay.
So
All of the town buildings do?
all of the electricity that's purchased by everyone in town, unless they opt out of that arrangement,
Okay.
is 100% wind generated.
So should this go through, SAMA would have the ability to just purchase from the same supplier that the rest of the residents in town do?
I presume so.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that we lead by example. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the final one I already mentioned, to Jim, at least 30 days prior to commencement of construction, the applicant shall submit a final plan set demonstrating compliance with all conditions. And then there are operating conditions that have to do with submitting a copy of the provisional license, providing the chief of police and town manager the names, phone numbers, and email addresses of all management staff key holders and 2 contact persons to whom complaints or inquiries shall be directed. After commencing operations, the applicant must report any incidents to the police department within 24 hours, report to the building inspector any cease and desist order, quarantine order, suspension order, limiting sales order, notice of hearing, or final action by the Cannabis Control Commission as applicable regarding the establishment. Submit copies of all reports submitted to any state agency, the reports required by 935 CMR 500, describing the establishment's liability insurance coverage, and the annual security system audits required by 935 CMR 500. Such reports may be redacted as necessary to comply with any applicable state or federal laws or regulations. And then the next section, document to the SBGA that each establishment agent has completed training regarding the proper handling of cannabis prior to performing job functions. All this, by the way, is required by the Cannabis Control Commission, and most of this is somewhat repetitive. And it's just simply that the town would receive copies of this documentation as well. Next section. This special permit shall be limited to the original applicant and shall expire on the earliest date of either 1, the cessation of operation of the establishment by the special permit holder, or 2, any revocation, expiration, or termination of an applicant's license from the CCC, or 3, any change in the company's ownership, including a takeover, merger, sale to another entity, or other change in ownership. That would require a new special permit.
So one point I'd like to make there would be, I think there should be a clause in there for either, a grave health condition or sudden death of one of the 4 principals. I don't think that it should be punitive that they would go through a special permit hearing should one of the principals suddenly pass away or get gravely ill. So if we could put some sort of a health clause or a death clause in there.
I think we could put it subject to the discretion of the select board.
Okay.
Number 4, 5 years from the date of issue. If the applicant wishes to renew the special permit, a request to renew must be submitted at least 120 days prior to the expiration of the special permit. If the board determines that there have been repeated and documented violations of this special permit, it may hold a public hearing to determine whether to renew the special permit. If the board does not commence a public hearing within 90 days after receipt of such renewal request, the special permit shall automatically renew for an additional 5 years.
Okay, and should we put more language in there as to if there is no documented violations or repeated offenses, that they will be renewed? I mean, if they are a good business entity,
Well, that's basically what it says. The board may hold a public hearing if there have been violations.
But
if
it
the
doesn't
board
say that
doesn't-
they don't have to.
The board
that's
doesn't have
subjective.
to.
Yeah.
But if the board if there haven't been any and the board doesn't commence a public hearing, then the special permit shall automatically renew.
Okay.
And that's basically language from our town council.
Right, and it's in our HCA as well. Every 5 years, they have to.
The HCA is actually mandated by the Cannabis Control Commission that it cannot go longer than 5 years. It
Right.
has to be renegotiated after 5 years.
Renegotiated after 5 years.
Yeah. Whereas the special permit would renew automatically unless there were some reason not to.
However, if they choose not to renegotiate the HCA, then the current HCA goes back into effect after 90 days.
Correct.
That's in our HCA, so.
Yep. The applicant shall annually file an affidavit with the building inspector demonstrating that is in good standing with respect to its license from the Cannabis Control Commission and any other applicable state licenses. The applicant shall notify the SPGA within 20 days of any projected or actual increase in the number of employees, amount of traffic, or extent of tree removal, grading, drainage, or lighting beyond that specified in the site plan submitted as part of the special permit application. The applicant shall notify the SPGA and the Conservation Commission within 20 days of any increase over 10% in projected or actual peak daily water use and of any projected or intended use of fertilizers, pesticide, herbicide, or fungicide, whether organic or not, by the facility beyond that specified in the site plan submitted as part of the special permit application. The special permit application has given a fair amount of detail about fertilizer applications, but no pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides have not been addressed. The applicant shall maintain the facility in good condition. Maintenance shall include but not be limited to painting, structural repairs, and integrity of security measures. Site access shall be made to a level acceptable to the local fire chief and emergency medical services. Prior to construction, the applicant shall provide a form of surety to cover the cost of removal and restoration of the site in the event the site is abandoned. The amount and form of surety shall be determined by the select board, but in no event shall the amount exceed 125% of the cost of removal. Applicant shall submit a fully inclusive cost estimate which accounts for inflation of the costs associated with the removal of the establishment prepared by a qualified engineer. Said cost estimate shall be reviewed by the applicant or their successor every 5 years from the date of final installation and adjusted as necessary. The applicant shall notify the building inspector in writing at least 48 hours prior to the intended cessation of operation of the establishment for a period of 12 months or more, or of the revocation, expiration, or termination of the permit holder's license from the Cannabis Control Commission. And then the last section is entitled Abandonment and Removal. The facility shall be deemed abandoned if it ceases to operate for a period of 12 months. After 12 months of non-operation, the building inspector shall provide written notification to the applicant that such establishment is presumed to be abandoned. The applicant has 30 days from the issuance of such notice to rebut the presumption of abandonment by submitting evidence to the building inspector that the marijuana establishment has been in operation during the relevant 12 months, or that good cause exists for the non-operation and that the facility has not, in fact, been abandoned. If the applicant does not respond within the 30-day period or does not submit evidence that in the discretion of the building inspector proves that the facility has been in operation for the relevant 12-month period or that good causes exists for the non-operation and that the facility has not in fact been abandoned, then the facility shall be deemed abandoned. The building inspector shall provide written notification of abandonment to the applicant. The applicant of the marijuana establishment shall remove all traces of cannabis and marijuana products from the marijuana establishment and restore the site by, at a minimum, removing all structures or transfer it to another owner within 180 days of the date of the written notification of abandonment, or such further time as the select board may in its sole discretion approve. If the applicant fails to remove all traces of cannabis and marijuana products and restore or transfer the establishment within 180 days, the town shall have the right, to the extent it is duly authorized by law, to enter onto the site and remove all traces of cannabis and marijuana products, and if deemed necessary by the select board, to physically remove the marijuana establishment and restore the site at the sole expense of the applicant using the surety provided. So those are the conditions that are proposed as conditions for the special permit. The introduction also says the special permit shall be conditional on the applicant receiving approval from the Sandisfield Conservation Commission, addressing issues including but not limited to distance from the wetlands buffer zone, erosion control, and stormwater management.
Okay, thank you, George. Mark, do you have any comments, questions, anything?
The only thing I can say is I believe that most of these issues that George has brought up are in the application and also in the host agreement.
They are, and as he noted, several of the last pages there are specifically enforced by the CCC. So it is redundant language, but it is quite common in cases like this. So.
Okay.
All right, then at this point, I would make a motion to approve the application with the conditions proposed by Selectman Riley and as modified by the board. Can I get a second?
Second.
I do a roll call vote, starting with Selectman Newman.
Mark Newman, aye.
Selectman Riley.
Selectman Riley, aye.
And Chair Brian O'Rourke, aye. At this point, I would close the meeting. It is now 8:15 p.m. The special permit has passed, and we are done for the evening. Thank you for your time, folks.